Our think tank's name is the Melting Pots, and we represent Russia on global climate change.
Here is a list of slide narrators.
Vulnerabilities and opportunities for Russia based on global climate change. Russia is vulnerable to climate change based on its economic dependence on fossil fuels. Petroleum products account for over 2/3 of its exports. As other countries try to cut down on emissions, this could affect the amount of oil they are importing from Russia. Exposure to this hazard could harm Russia in several areas. Economically, the oil industry could take a hit and jobs could be lost. This could in turn affect culture and political spheres in Russia, possibly causing unrest amongst the population. Russia is also vulnerable because of its large landmass. Due to how much area it has, the population is very dispersed. This could hinder attempts to institute sweeping infrastructure changes that would reduce emissions. Ecologically, this failure to help combat emissions could cause temperatures to continue to rise. This could cause plants and animals to go extinct. As a result of this, industries such as fishing and lumber could be harmed. Another vulnerability Russia has is peat and forest fires. As temperatures rise, the risk of forest and peat fires goes up. Russia has the largest peat marshes in the world. As these burn, they worsen the problem and help to cause more fires down the line. As these fires wipe out forests and marshes, Russia is exposed in several ways. Ecologically, habitats are destroyed. Also, the smoke from peat fires can be so bad that it hinders tourism, affecting the Russian economy.
The thawing of permafrost, which is frozen soil in the ground, gives off methane at a rate that is 25 times higher than CO2. This could cause a need to rebuild infrastructure, which would cause for new jobs, but massive amounts of financial costs would be necessary, and this would of course force families from out of their homes and into new ones. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has came to the conclusion that northern countries are most susceptible to higher temperatures, which would cause many repercussions. Things such as flash flooding or major coastal flooding, which would make people more likely to get diseases, move out of their homes, etc. This would of course cause more permafrost thawing, adding on to the never-ending cycle of emissions of greenhouse gases.
For the opportunities, the permafrost in Russia accounted for 60% of the land area. With a warmer temperature, Russia can gain more than 20% more land for doing what they want. Because Russia is a large country, although it's just 20%, it's probably larger than a small country. The sustained development of the economy society is closely related to the usable land resources. Thus, the more usable land, the greater the benefit for Russia. Politically, with a stable economy, the government can focus more on the things such as diplomacy, citizens' livelihood, and culturally, more land allows for good cultural diversity. Russia holds vast amount of fossil fuel and they burn them up for heating as well as exporting to other European countries. With a higher temperature, Russia may export more for helping their economy. For economy, like I said in the previous slides, Russia will gain more export revenue on fossil fuel. And politically, Russia can more or less control lots of European countries because they are using Russia's resources. Socially, on the other hand, the warmer climate leads people to do more outside activities.
Arctic Russia plays an important role in economy. The ice starts to melt because of rising temperatures, so there will be more area available for mining and also shipping. Mining provides great amount of job opportunities to local people and boosts Russian economy. Also, the lower unemployment rate will stabilize its society and provide higher fiscal income. Mining will lead local regions with prosperity with culture since it will suffer from the Soviet time. Because of climate change, Siberia will become the image of fertile farmland. Warm temperature exposes new new land for cultivation, and the land is usually rich in nutrients since it has never been used. Agriculture will boost Russian economy and stabilize the society. Increased supply from food production could also bring higher quality products to Russian people. New species can also be found from land and water after the ice melt. Global climate change can also bring more fertility to its frozen sea so that fishing industry will increase in the economic zone. Coastal Russia will enjoy a time of prosperity from fishing, and fish export could speed up Russian economy. Some species will have a better chance to live because of the increasing level of nutrients in the water.
The history of Russia regarding climate change. Before the Industrial Revolution, the Russian economy was dominated by agriculture. This system operated with a few landowners forcing serfs to work for them. Russia feared the West would upset the system and therefore isolated themselves. This caused them to fall behind the West in technology. As the Industrial Revolution began to cause great strides in technology, Russia overestimated its power and attempted to seize control of the Black Sea. In what is known as the Crimean War, Russia was defeated by the West. This led Russia to rethink its ideals and make changes, such as emancipating the serfs. Russia also began to rapidly industrialize from the late 1800s all the way up to the fall of the Soviet Union.
Russia has historically been very dependent on things such as coal, natural gas, and oil. However, the country has surprisingly lowered its total emissions by about 4% today. This shows Russia is willing to lower emissions whenever they want to. Russia now sits fourth among all countries in total emissions, behind only the US, China, and India, as shown in the presentation.
Russia has more than a fifth of the world's forests, covering about 45% of its territory, which makes it the largest forest country in the world. Russia's per capita forest area is 5.2 hectares, which is 4.8 times more than the world's per capita area. The timber industry is a significant contributor to the economy of Russia, which worth about $20 billion per year. The graph on the right shows that Russia has the highest gross forest loss as well as pretty high net forest loss from 2000 to 2012. The table on the right tells us that the carbon balance in forest ecosystem of Russia is positive, and with time goes by, the balance is getting larger.
Resources are distributed unequally, and people with higher social status have better care and enjoy material prosperity. And people with higher income have a higher carbon emission because they use machines intensively. Rural areas, on the other hand, have less access to electricity so that they have a lower carbon footprint. Russian people are used to unpredictable situations, so they usually adapt very quickly. Families with lower incomes can better cope with climate change because they use less motor vehicles. And upper class deal with climate change badly because they're used to their lives with the benefits of technology and machines that consume energy from burning coals.
In today's Russia, we have identified 4 vulnerable groups. These are women, indigenous peoples, poor people, and Jews. Women are vulnerable in Russia because of their lack of power and prestige. They often are held out of industrial and political jobs. This can limit their wages and make it hard for them to adapt to climate change. 18 million Russians live below the poverty line, while 97 billionaires own most of the country's wealth, land, and natural resources. The time of a poor person is spent mostly searching for food, money, jobs, or other necessaries. This can cause them to be removed from the idea of climate change and be poorly educated on its effects. Their poor status can also make it hard for them to adapt to the changes climate change may bring.
30 groups of Aboriginal people live in Russia, mostly all of them poor and living in a very isolated lifestyle. Their low financial income makes it hard for these people to adapt to a new lifestyle that benefits climate change. The Jewish population faced persecution in Russia a while ago, which caused a lot of them to leave, and because of their low population and lack of influence, makes it difficult to make a difference in climate change in Russia and have them feel the most negative effects of climate change.
Farming will become greener. Forests and grasslands will be managed professionally. Techniques like precision agriculture will be introduced to reduce soil erosion. Crops will ultimately produce biofuel to help address climate change. However, farmers might refuse the help from the government, and the government might face challenges in fiscal situation when they use high technology to help farming. Also, scientists are still unaware of whether those techniques will cause ecological damage to the environment. Government will introduce policies including putting high tax on high-emission cars and subsidy on hybrid or electricity cars to handle nitrogen oxide and carbon dioxide. Local industry, due to their inability to produce energy-saving cars, might face challenge in the market. Government expenditure will increase tremendously due to their subsidy on energy-saving cars. Import car industry might reopen Russian market and build more plants in Russia and therefore offset the reduced emission from the previous policies.
Because Russia lies almost the north pole of the Earth, it's extremely cold all the years. Like the previous slides we mentioned, Russia burns lots of fossil fuel for heating. Therefore, investing in a thicker insulation and other cost-effective temperature-regulating steps can save money and reduce the emission in the long run. And bad roads can lower the fuel economy for even the most efficient vehicle. Investing in new infrastructure or radically upgrade existing highway and transmission lines will help cut greenhouse gas emissions. For attention of this trade-off, first of all, while constructing new buildings and roads, it will discharge lots of greenhouse gases. Also, mining copper and other elements needed for electrical wiring and transmissions also causes global warming pollution, and government will face a severe economic problem for building the new roads and constructions as well as fixing the old parts. The fourth trade-off for Russia is stop the deforestation and prevent forest fires. Balancing the amount of wood taken out with the amount of new trees growing could quickly eliminate the significant chunk of emissions. Also, there are plenty of forest fires happening in Russia. If we can avoid them or even put out the fire faster, it will be good for the forest and reducing the emission. Tensions. Apparently, if they stop cutting down trees, it will dramatically harm the Russian economy because the timber industry is a significant contributor to the economy of Russia. In order to avoid the fires, we need more equipment and people to monitor and control. However, the human resources are not cheap in Russia, which means that there is a huge amount of expense. The fifth trade-off is new energy resource. Nuclear energy, for instance, is cheaper to obtain and therefore should be an ideal solution to climate change. By using the nuclear power, solar energy, tidal energy, and other clean energy, we can generate electricity with no sulfate and carbon emissions. Nowadays, we don't fully understand and have completely control of this new energy, so there could be a potential hazard inside. And this is practical problem for Russia because of the Chernobyl disaster. A nuclear plant often requires fewer personnel to maintain. This could become a problem regarding unemployment rate.
In terms of international politics and climate change, Russia got involved with the UNFCCC in the early 1990s and in 1995 became a member. Russia did not make any binding commitments to the UNFCCC until it signed Kyoto in 2004. However, Russia had already agreed to make voluntary emissions cuts before this date. Russia claims it signed Kyoto because of its commitment to ecology. However, many believe economic and political interests played a bigger role in this decision.
The protocol entered into force when ratified by at least 55 countries. With Russian ratification, the second threshold has been met. Emission targets become binding legal commitment for countries that have ratified. Mechanisms under Kyoto, including international emission trading, will become fully operational. Countries parties to the UNFCCC meet annually at the Conference of the Parties. The next conference after Russia's ratification is called COP10, which took place in Buenos Aires. It will be an opportunity for countries to explore options beyond 2012. Russia issues most JI credits and has the greatest AAU surplus. It has proven itself to have devoted in climate change in the joint implementation.
In 2011, Canada, Japan, and Russia stated that they would not take on further Kyoto targets. Russia reasons that if no major emitters such as United States, China, and India are part of Kyoto, then the second period of Kyoto Protocol makes no sense. Russia also stated that even if they doesn't accept the second period of Kyoto Protocol, they will still be actively participate and involved in the talks with United States and China in order to agree the new agreement on climate change. Comparing Russian current policies for greenhouse gas emissions and Kyoto Protocol. During the second commitment period, parties commit to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by at least 18% before 2020. However, President Putin's decision to reduce the general Russian carbon dioxide emissions by at least 25% relative to their 1990 levels. Therefore, although Russia refused the second commitment of Kyoto Protocol, they are doing what they were supposed to do.
Russia has been adamant in saying they want to reduce their emissions. Some question if climate change is the real reasoning behind it, quoting that they believe that it would be both beneficial economically and politically. However, Russia has reduced their emissions by 4% as previously stated. In conclusion, Russia wants to do things on their own terms in the way they want to so that it benefits them both politically and financially and economically. They are also a very large producer in coal, oil, etc., and have been interested in lowering emissions as well. We, as a group, believe that Russia should, first off, continue to be part of Kyoto. Secondly, hold out from signing any binding agreements in terms of climate change. And third and last, continue to do their part in reducing emissions and voluntarily reduce on their own, keeping them free from any agreements with any countries.
According to our recommendation, Russia will continue to be a part of Kyoto Protocol for the years ahead. Russia will set a goal to reduce carbon emission using different methods. However, Russia is highly relied on its energy exports and produces a great amount of emission. A reduction on emission could harm Russian economy and create numerous problems including unemployment. In order to address these problems, Russia can develop other ways to support its economy. For instance, put more focus on high tech will offset economy downshift created by emission reduction. Our second recommendation is to hold out from signing too much binding agreements. From this, Russia can leave their future generation with more resources to develop. However, political issues might become a problem since Russia refused to take part in helping other countries. Russia is a country that doesn't want too much interference from other countries, and it seems natural for Russia to not correspond with developing countries. Our last recommendation is to reduce carbon emission while not restricted by agreements with other countries. Russia might be easier to achieve its carbon reduction goal without help from others. However, it might also lose ally countries' support when it ever faces an economic crisis. To solve this, Russia could work on more sources of income, not depend too much on energy export. A diverse economy will help Russia overcome the crisis if one of the mainstay of economy collapses. From the intergeneration game, we learned that people cannot consume too much so that later generations can have sufficient resources to develop. Following this idea, our recommendation for Russia not to sign too much binding agreements seemed legit, because later Russian generation will bear the consequences of not having enough resource if Russia helps other country too much.
Theory of justice. Considering the future generation, we decide to refuse any binding agreements. This will give more resources to the next generations. Also, by doing this, government could continue the loose policies so that the industry can keep developing rapidly, which will also help in the Russian economy. And with the growth of economy, vulnerable population will benefit from it. In politics, because the United States also refused any binding agreements, Russia, as one of the three biggest countries in the world, is able to do the same things as the United States do. By applying our recommendations, vulnerable groups will benefit a lot. With continued importance placed on carbon emissions, the Russian government may be forced to get help from any places they can. This could open up better paying and higher prestige jobs for women. And the loose policies will help the deforestation issue so that indigenous people may live in their original areas. Also, because of the growth economy, the government could give money to the indigenous people for education. Moreover, reducing the emissions will slow the speed of climate change, which gives them more time to adapt the changing environment. For poor people, under the health economy, government may set up a fund for helping poor people on wages, food, and housing. Also, in order to reduce the emissions, there need to be someone who supervises energy conservation and emissions reduction. Therefore, government can offer poor people jobs and pay them. Both parties benefit. For Jews, with cuts in emissions, hopefully Russia will feel less of the effects of climate change. This will prevent the Jewish population from being placed in precarious situations. The following pages are our citations. Thanks for watching.